All right, everyone, it's time for special election coverage, actually. We've got to talk about the UK's election at the moment. It is looking considerably better, I think more optimistic for the Conservatives than even a few hours ago. What the last couple of days, what you had been seeing with the news there was that in polling, the Conservatives were slumping. They were expected to win, but it wasn't clear they were going to gain a majority and actually be able to govern unopposed. What appears to have happened, though, is that the Labour Party there, and I'll give some of the reasons I'm seeing that people are posting actually for this, have been punished. Completely swept, completely crushed, annihilated. This is a bigger upset than the 2016 election if the exit polling is true. And you got to keep in mind, this is exit polling we've got. This isn't live results. Those results will be trickling in over the coming hours, but it looks like number one, Joe Swinson, who leads the Liberal Democrats, they're the far left, like as opposed to Corbyn's worker left or old left, has probably lost, so they lose their leader. Corbyn might resign over this if the numbers look true. What's happened is that the Tories might have a majority of 80 or thereabouts, as in Labour plus everyone else combined wouldn't have as much seats by a considerable margin as Boris Johnson's people. He looks like he's going to have a good day. Now, there is some question, I guess, about whether Boris Johnson himself, though, will keep his seat, like he was more embattled, but the Tories appear to have won. It could be that the exit poll is off, but it would have to be off by such an absolutely remarkable margin. It's probably true. The Conservatives have secured a majority. Now, why are Labour's doing so poorly? I'm seeing multiple things, and it depends on who you ask whether they support or oppose Labour. People who support Labour, a lot of them are like, well, it's Corbyn's fault. Our leader had problems with, recently dust-ups over anti-Semitic comments supposedly that he made, and that's neither here nor there in my opinion, but some voters would care in the UK. Some people saying, well, he's economically illiterate. People are terrified of him being prime minister. They're afraid of a far-left economic policy, regardless of any other feelings they have. The idea that he hadn't taken a hard enough stance on Brexit, and this is something both pro and anti-Brexit forces have brought up on both sides. And I've heard him myself in what little I've paid attention to more recently about the UK's political situation, which is that he never tried to force people in his party to be pro or anti. More people in the Labour Party are against. What this did maybe is depress turnout. I think there was a lack of tactical voting, between the Labour and other left-wing groups that are more anti-Brexit, and so you've had potentially this result as well. Then there are people who hate Corbyn, and they're mostly pointing to one of two things. His economic beliefs, if they're just a standard conservative, or if they're specifically pro-Brexit, that's what they're pointing to. This lattermost facet of it is probably why most of the people rejected him, which is that even in the minds, I think, of some people that weren't gung-ho for Brexit the first time around, this is a de facto people's vote, which is what they've been calling for. Let us have another vote on Brexit. It's not like we didn't just have one several years ago that voted for Brexit. I think what's happened is people have rejected calls through this for an actual second vote, and this is a stand-in for that. They've punished Labour to the point where it looks like they will be irrelevant within the government. It looks like Boris Johnson, if he is indeed still Prime Minister, after this, which, I'm not 100% sure whether they're expecting that or not, will have carte blanche essentially to pass through with Brexit. It'd be a deal Brexit, presumably. I'm not sure, and there's the other part. And this is one thing we need to wait, and we're going to have to see further analysis probably tomorrow. What composition of those Tories and Labour individuals that won were pro versus anti-Brexit, because you have variability within these two groups. It's not like SNP is anti-Brexit. They want an indie referendum for Scotland. They want Scotland to be able to be free, but they don't want the UK to be free of the EU. They're anti-Brexit across the board. The Green movement is anti-Brexit. And then you've got the Brexit Party or Four and a few of these other smaller groups. With the Conservatives and Labour, though, it's a split. More Conservatives are for it. More Labour are against it, but there are some holdouts. We've got to see. It would be interesting to get some analysis, actually, and I'm sure that we'll get some tomorrow, potentially about what the composition is. Like the Conservatives before and after the election, Labour before and after, what was the proportion before of pro versus anti within these parties? Because if there are enough people that are pro-Brexit, in the labor movement, plus those that are conservative, Boris Johnson might be able to go ahead with a no-deal Brexit, which would be the best possible scenario. It's just unlikely. I would look at this and I would caution people. This doesn't necessarily mean you get a clean break from the EU as you voted for. Most people, I think, that were saying they said, well, we'll leave the EU. Why would the EU even deign to punish us? Like, you want to be our friend, but then you're going to mistreat us. I think we're taken aback, actually, at the behavior of some of the EU's authorities thereafter. So yeah, congratulations to the Conservatives and all the Brexit Party supporters and all of the others there that want sovereignty for the UK. Corbyn is an idiot, quite frankly. It wouldn't have even mattered. Like, if Corbyn had come out in favor of Brexit, still it would have made sense to vote against him because he is economically illiterate. He's like further left than someone like Bernie Sanders. Like, he probably would consider Sanders to be a stand-up kind of guy. And of course, this is, by the way, a little bit a reflection of what could happen in the U.S. If the Democrats choose to go far left, if they choose, to have their own Corbyn, which would be a Sanders or maybe a Warren, they'll lose in a similar fashion, I think. Dude, the overlap is there. People in the UK right now are saying, oh, well, Boris Johnson's kind of like Trump, and Corbyn's kind of like a Bernie Sanders. Yeah, there's a little bit of a resemblance. I don't think Johnson's as intelligent as Trump is. And I know that there are a lot of people who don't like either of them who would say, oh, calling Trump intelligent. Well, who's salty right now? It's not the Conservatives. It's not Brexiteers. It's Remoaners. It's people who wanted to stay under the EU's anti-sovereignty sort of tyranny. They lost. It says, so for the second time in a Democratic vote, you've had a spectacular loss for people who want slavery. These people then get salty and they go on Twitter and start whining and crying and posting violent memes and talking about how evil and terrible the UK is, that they were just saying, oh, please, Lord, save us from the evil Boris Johnson, just moments before. I'll be paying some attention to this for the rest of the night. Of course, sleep applies, but tomorrow definitely. If there's anything major, like the exit poll is majorly wrong and actually Labour really won and for some reason they switched the numbers or something, I'll definitely report on that. If not, just, you can look into it yourself. But it will be important to note, because neither the Conservative nor the Labour Party is homogenous, we have to remember that there is a split between those that support versus those that oppose sovereignty. It'll be important to look into that. And also to see whether Boris Johnson apparently even has his job tomorrow. That's about all. Peace out.